Hello, my name is James Mannion and I'm a teacher and an education researcher. And today's a really exciting day for me because I finally get to tell the world about a project which I've been working on for about the last 6 years or so, which is a really long time to work on something and not tell people what it is that you're up to. Part of the reason for that is that it's a longitudinal study, which has been a 5 year long study. And part of the reason is that we've been waiting for publication of the data, or some of the data at least, in a peer-reviewed journal. And so, as you can see here, today the Curriculum Journal have published an article called Learning to Learn, Improving Attainment, Closing the Gap at Key Stage 3, which is written by myself and my PhD supervisor, Professor Neil Mercer. And this article tells the story of a curriculum which I was involved in designing and teaching for 4 years, from 2010 through to 2014, at a secondary school in the south of England. And it's a Key Stage 3 curriculum, so the first cohort of young people who went through that curriculum sat their GCSEs in the summer just gone, in summer 2016. What we're presenting here is the interim 3 year findings of this program, if you like, and so we're looking at how they were doing at the end of year 9, and we're comparing them with the previous year group at the same school who were very comparable at entry but who didn't receive the Learning to Learn. And the GCSE analysis will follow in the coming months. So as you can see, we adopted a combined approach to Learning to Learn, which is to say that we had both a taught curriculum and also it was embedded throughout the school. This taught curriculum was delivered by a dedicated team of teachers. That's a really important point. My first involvement in this project was to be interviewed to be part of the team. And I think that if you're going to do something like this, you really have to have it staffed by people who passionately believe in it and who want to make it work. And as I say, it was embedded throughout the school, and so we had lots of staff training around how to talk about the how of learning as well as the what of learning in lessons. And we had a shared language of learning so that the young people had a more joined up diet of learning throughout the school. It was an evidence-based curriculum, so we pulled together lots of different areas of practice which have been shown to be beneficial for young people, especially for young people from more disadvantaged backgrounds. And I want to focus on just 4 areas quickly here today. One being oracy, so there was a relentless focus on speaking and listening, so the young people had weekly philosophical inquiries, for example, which have previously been found to lead to academic gains elsewhere. We also had lots of focus on paired talk, working firstly with people who they are familiar with, and then working towards being able to work with people who they're not so familiar with. And also things like structured debates and public speaking, so oracy was huge. Self-regulation, so that was basically about helping the young people to gain a sense of ownership, a real sense of ownership over the process of learning. So we had lots of project-based learning. And there are other places in the country, for example, School 21 in London, that's got really, really good practice around project-based learning and oracy. So we're not saying that we're doing anything that's brand new here, but we are just telling the story of what we did. Metacognition, so that's about providing young people with the time and the space in which to reflect on the processes of learning, how they learn in different contexts, and what it is that they're actually doing when they're learning effectively. And transfer across domains. So sometimes people have found in the past that you can develop a set of skills or dispositions in one particular context, but those skills and dispositions don't necessarily transfer into other areas. So you can set up a task over here where the young people are expected to share their findings and work very equitably and work towards agreement and so on, and they can do that because the expectations are very clear. And then if they go to another lesson, to French or PE or art or whatever, they will behave in quite different ways because the expectations are different, the environment is different, and so on. And what we've found is that actually transfer is possible. It's just that you have to carefully manage it at both ends of the process. It certainly doesn't happen automatically, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen at all. And so this was subjected to a 5 year longitudinal study. This has been the focus of my PhD, which is a very wide-ranging project, but what we're presenting here is the main outcome measure, which is students' attainment in their subject learning across all subject areas. So by the end of year 9, compared with the previous year group, who were very comparable at entry to the school, They had very similar, they had the same teachers, they were in the same school, the behavior expectations were the same. And so, and bear in mind as well that the previous cohort had 400 more lessons of subject-based learning throughout Key Stage 3. And so as you can see here, there was about a 10% increase in the Learning to Learn cohort in the percentage of young people hitting or exceeding target by the end of Year 9, which is amazing considering that they had 400 fewer lessons of subject-based learning. And in particular, these gains, as you'll see in a minute, I'll show you a couple of the main figures from the paper. This was driven mainly by a huge closing of the pupil premium gap from the bottom up. So by the end of Year 9, in the pre-Learning to Learn cohort, there was a 25% gap between pupil premium and non-pupil premium students, which is often used as a shorthand for social or economic disadvantage. And in the Learning to Learn cohort, that gap was just 2%. So this is the overall data. As you can see, this is the percentage of young people hitting or exceeding target, and the two bars on the left, the grey bars, are the pre-Learning to Learn cohort, the white bars are the Learning to Learn cohort. So the bars on the left are where we see that 10% increase, but if you break that down into pupil premium and non-pupil premium students, we see firstly with those middle bars that actually non-pupil premium students also performed better than the previous year group. And so this was not only beneficial for young people from more disadvantaged backgrounds, but as you can see from the bars on the right, it was particularly beneficial to pupil premium students, where we see about a 20% increase in the numbers of young people hitting or exceeding target. As you can also see here, there was quite a big discrepancy in terms of the numbers of young people. There's 30 fewer students in the Learning to Learn cohort. Part of the reason for that, the main reason for that, is that in June of the year that this program began, the school was placed into special measures, and obviously that had an impact on student numbers. So this is the last figure that I'll show you in this video. This is the closing the gap analysis, and this graph takes a little bit of getting your head around. The y-axis is the percentage difference between pupil premium and non-pupil premium students hitting or exceeding target. And then as you can see, it's broken down by subject. So this is the gap, if you like. So if you look at English, in the pre-Learning to Learn cohort, there was a greater than 30% difference. So there's a much higher percentage of non-pupil premium students hitting or exceeding their target grades than pupil premium students. And as you can see, in the Learning to Learn cohort in English, by the end of Year 9, the gap had closed so completely that it had actually gone the other way. So where those white bars for a few of the subjects go below the 0 line, that tells us that pupil premium students in those subjects were actually outperforming non-pupil premium students, which is what you would expect to see. If disadvantage was not a predictor of educational success, we would expect to see a balanced picture like this, where pupil premium students sometimes outperform non-pupil premium, and sometimes it's vice versa, and overall we see a balanced picture. And so if we condense all this data back together in those two bars on the right hand side of this figure, that's where we get this 25 to 2% closing of the gap in the space of one academic year, really, from one cohort to the next, from one Year 9 cohort to the next. So these data are very encouraging, we feel, and we're looking to expand this practice further afield. So if you are a school leader, and if you're interested in what you've heard, and you're interested in potentially developing some of these practices in your school, then we're really happy to share our methods and to help people to do that, and potentially to evaluate it as part of an extended research project. So, and also it's worth mentioning that it's extremely cost effective, this method. We're not selling anything apart from staff training. It doesn't cost anything to implement. We ended up with more money in our budget at the end of the year than we had at the start, because there was lots of fundraising involved and so on. So if you're interested in getting involved in this project and you'd like to find out more, then please email me at jwm43@cam.ac.uk. Thanks very much for watching.